Nice to hang out with mates on a Thursday night, and here are two of our favourites amongst the Paul Murray Live family, none other than the wonderful James Ashby, who is not at home. He's very close to an office, a studio this evening. Where are you, my friend? Great jacket, by the way.
Perth.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Perth. I was very lucky to be able to see the swearing in of our two new MLCs here in Western Australia. So Phil Scott and Rod Caddies. You can see them as welcomed additions to your show, Paul, if you want. Two new MLCs for One Nation in WA.
Happy to help. Well, straight after you've done this little hit, I'll tell you what, there's a joint not too far from Murray Street. Some of the best dumplings I've ever had. I'll send you that in a second. A man who's going, what is all of this rubbish, is none other than, of course, Michael Kroger, who's doing it from home tonight. You know, a little too cold outside, bugger it. But he's still dressed up. He might have the PJs on downstairs, but he's looking business upstairs. Nice to see you, mate. All right. So, Michael, how do you feel at the end that, thankfully, look, a couple of days, egg on some people's faces, red faces, but who cares? If by Monday we're back where we were last Monday, that's a good thing, right, when it comes to the coalition?
Yeah, obviously, Paul, there's some, bruising that takes place when this type of, fracas takes place. So things will take quite a while to settle down, to be honest. There's been a lot of media interviews, a lot of backgrounding, a lot of unhappiness on both sides. So, the truth is that that'll take some months to repair. But look, thank goodness they're going to get back together. The four policy issues were never the issue, but Susan Lee sort of made it clear that she had to take those things to the party room. And the big sticking point, as we now know, was David Littleproud's view that, the Nationals wanted the right to, or he wanted the right to be able to have National Party MPs, resist shadow cabinet and oppose shadow cabinet if they didn't feel inclined to follow what they decided. Now, Susan Lee quite properly said no. Anyway, that's all in the past. It looks as if they're going to get back together, and thank goodness. I mean, otherwise, mate, it would have been like Noah's Ark. I mean, two shadow treasurers, two foreign shadow spokespeople, blah, blah, blah. I mean, yeah, it would have been a recipe for disaster. Three-cornered contests in every seat, no joint Senate tickets, no joint policies, no joint releases. I mean, it's untenable, all right? And as John Howard and Tony Abbott correctly said, the Liberals and the Nationals work best together when they're in coalition federally, and that's the way it should be. And thank goodness that sense is going to prevail, mate.
James, if nothing else, it means perhaps in 3 years' time they're back on the same ticket, and a little bit of that quota, if they don't get it, it may well go back in the direction of One Nation, which does seem to be what's happening in terms of preferences. But more practically this week, what have you thought of watching on as people who just a few weeks ago wanted to be a government couldn't work out how they would be in opposition?
Look, if they're only getting back together again for the kids' sake, it's probably the wrong approach, and they're going to have some issues moving forward because, Mum and Dad have still got their differences. And we're talking about the National Party here rightfully putting their foot down and saying we want and demand more respect as a party. We've seen for too long the National Party just treated as the accessory to the Liberal Party, the Robin to Batman, or, the shadow in the dark. And this is the problem for the Nats. They're trying to say to the Liberal Party, stop taking us for granted. But there are deep-seated problems within both camps, and I don't think the trust is going to be returned easily here. I've spoken to Liberal Party members just as soon as the election finished who had great concerns over the fact that Barnaby Joyce says things every time he opens his mouth, he loses us Liberals votes. And Matt Canavan loses us votes every time he opens our mouths. You're hardly going to fix that problem by sort of having this little bit of a row and then kissing and making up within a week's time. So there's some real problems. And I've heard Liberals say our greatest defeat or our greatest achievement was actually getting rid of the Nationals in South Australia. And I just think to myself, that's not the coalition partner I'd want if they're still getting around making those sorts of statements. So they've got to fix this once and for all. Otherwise, it will be a breakup again in the future, and there'll be leadership spills, there'll be blood to pay or blood spilled off the back of this. So it does need fixing. I agree, but they are stronger as a coalition.